Welcome to our next heat transfer lecture. This one is going to focus on the three modes of heat transfer and their rate equations. And actually this lecture is specifically about the mode of heat transfer called conduction. So the three different modes of heat transfer are shown here. We have conduction, which is heat transfer within a solid. It could also be a stationary fluid, but it basically just means that the material, the atoms and molecules are moving, but they're kind of bound. There's not a bulk motion there. They're moving, vibrating, translating, but they're basically staying in place. Conduction is going to use a rate equation, which is the equation that we use to quantify the amount of heat flowing by conduction, which comes from Fourier's law. And this is something you'll hear repeatedly. So Fourier's law is the rate equation associated with conduction. For convection, convection is heat transfer from a surface to a moving fluid. So unlike conduction, convection has this bulk fluid motion, and the rate equation associated with convection is called Newton's law of cooling. Finally, for radiation, which is typically from a surface to another surface, although there are exceptions to that, that uses a rate equation called the Stefan-Boltzmann law. So today we're going to focus on conduction in this video. Before we get to that point, I want to ask a quick review question. So just think to yourself, what is the driving force for heat transfer? And if you remember from previous lectures, the driving force is a temperature difference. So whenever one material has a higher temperature than surrounding materials, there's going to be a natural inclination for heat to flow from the higher temperature material to the lower temperature material, and the greater the difference between the two, the more the flow of heat will happen. So if there's a bigger temperature difference, there will be a bigger driving force and more heat transfer will occur. Conduction, as a reminder, it's heat transfer through a solid or a stationary fluid that is caused by random motion of its constituent atoms, molecules, or electrons. So here on the left, if we have this solid, if the left-hand side of the solid has a higher temperature than the right-hand side, we're going to naturally see a flow of heat going from left to right. This particular diagram shows the heat flux, which is denoted by Q double prime. To help you get your head around how conduction works, we're going to do this thought experiment. So let's just imagine that we have a metal rod, which is just kind of suspended. And initially it is it's isothermal. It's at a uniform temperature throughout the rod. But let's say we introduced a change into our system and we added a heat source, something like a Bunsen burner on the far left-hand side of this rod. So what would happen is, as you add energy from this Bunsen burner into the left-hand side of the rod, that energy is going to go into those atoms and molecules, and they're going to start vibrating and moving around faster than they normally would. But remember, because it's a solid, those atoms and molecules are bound, so they might be vibrating or moving in place, but they're not moving very far distances. So as those atoms and molecules become energized and start to move around, that energy or that amount of molecular activity could be measured by a temperature. So if you had a surface or a skin thermocouple there, you'd actually see the temperature rise. But on a micro scale, what that means is there's just more molecular activity right there. So those molecules, they are moving and bouncing around. So naturally, if we thought of this in like chunks or sections, naturally the molecules from this chunk or section are going to want to convey that energy to the next chunk of this material. So those molecules are going to bump into their adjacent molecules, which is going to cause the adjacent molecules to become more energized. They'll start moving around more. The temperature here will rise, and again, so on and so on. That heat will gradually propagate its way down the length of this rod, and that is how conduction occurs. A similar visual from the book, although the coordinate system is tilted, you see that if you have a higher temperature on one side of a solid material, represented by these darker red atoms, those atoms are going to be more energized. They're going to impact the adjacent atoms because these atoms are at a higher energy state than these, so they're naturally going to want to transfer some of that energy here. Those will transfer it here, and so on and so on. You can see this plot here where we have the higher temperature. Energy is going to flow downhill from high temperature to low with the flux going against the temperature gradient. So that takes us to Fourier's law. So Fourier's law is a way of putting math to what I just described. So we see that our heat flux is proportional to the negative of K. K is the thermal conductivity of a material. So it's a measure of how well that material conducts heat, multiplied by the temperature gradient. And notice the units of the temperature gradient are going to be in degrees Celsius per meter or Kelvin per meter, which, because it's relative, those would be the equivalent units. So our heat flux is equal to minus K times the gradient of temperature. So what that tells us is that heat flows against the temperature gradient. That's what this negative sign does for us. So you're going to be solving a lot of problems with Fourier's law, so it's really important to, if you're confused about it, to work through that confusion, to keep on repeating problems and just get better and better at it, and naturally over time it'll start to make more sense to you. So as an attempt to do that, I have this picture of a solid material, and if we plotted, if we had X going in this direction from left to right, and if we were to plot our temperature as a function of X, just for the sake of simplicity, let's assume this temperature gradient is, well, this temperature profile is linear. So this is called a temperature profile. It's a plot or a graph of, or data representing our temperature as a function of some spatial coordinate or coordinates. So if our temperature gradient is going this way, notice that it's a negative slope. So the temperature gradient is negative. So if our temperature gradient is negative, our overall rate of heat transfer is going to be positive, because the thermal conductivity is also always positive. Which means if our heat flux is positive, that just means it's going with our coordinate system. So if we plotted Q in the X direction, we would see, if this is zero heat flux, we would see, because our slope here, our gradient is constant, and our thermal conductivity is constant, we would see this constant positive flow of heat. So heat is going to be flowing this way, and it's going to be the same flow of heat all the way through that solid. So that's how Fourier's law works. If we have a constant slope, then if the slope is constant through a material, then you can express the Fourier's law differently in terms of an absolute temperature difference. So first of all, if our system is one-dimensional, meaning our temperature only varies in one dimension, in this case x, meaning that it does not vary in the y direction or in the z direction, but only in the x direction, then our gradient becomes a little bit simpler. We just have to worry about the derivative of temperature with respect to one spatial coordinate. So Fourier's law takes on this one-dimensional form, which we'll work quite a bit with, especially in Chapter 3. We have our heat flux in the x direction is just equal to minus K, remember the additive inverse of our thermal conductivity, multiplied by the derivative of temperature with respect to x. But when that derivative of temperature with respect to x is constant, because we have a constant slope temperature profile, then you could just do rise over the run. You could take the temperature here and the temperature here, take the difference, divide that by the total width of our wall, and get this form of Fourier's law. Remember, this only applies when we know that dt dx is constant, and under these particular set of circumstances, a one-dimensional system where it's steady, which means it's not changing with time. This particular type of system is called a plane wall, and it has constant thermal conductivity. Only under those conditions, where we know dt dx is constant, can we extrapolate and use this simpler algebraic form of Fourier's law. And just with a little bit of algebraic manipulation, you can switch the positions of those temperatures and get this form. So if we know that these conditions apply, we can express Fourier's law algebraically to get our heat flux just by measuring those two endpoint temperatures and putting them into our equation. So heat flux, if you remember, has units of watts per meter squared. So that tells us how much heat is flowing per unit area. But more specifically, the area that we're talking about is the cross-sectional area. So it's the area that is normal or perpendicular to the flow of heat. So it would be this area. If heat's flowing this way, it'd be the area that intercepts that flow of heat by being perpendicular to it. So shown on this diagram, if we were to take a slice out of this wall, that area would be the width of the wall multiplied by the height of the wall would be the appropriate area. So if we use Fourier's law to quantify the heat flux by measuring the temperature and plugging in the wall thickness and thermal conductivity, if instead of wanting to know flux in terms of heat loss per square meter, if we wanted the total rate of heat loss, we would just multiply our flux by the total cross-sectional area of the wall, and that would give us the total rate of heat loss. So you could do this in your own home. If you knew that these conditions applied to the walls of your home, you could calculate the flux. So how much heat is your home losing or gaining by conductive heat transfer? If you applied this form of Fourier's law, you'd get the flux. But then if you wanted to know something a little bit more practical, like how much energy is my house losing in total, then you would just multiply that by the cross-sectional area of all the walls in your home, assuming that it's all uniform throughout, which would be a big assumption. But then you could get the total rate of heat loss in your house in terms of watts. And this is something that would actually impact your heating bill or your air conditioning bill, is how many watt hours, or rather kilowatt hours, is required to heat or cool your home. So heat transfer has some really practical applications. But it's really important to get very used to going back and forth between these two different forms. So the heat flux in terms of watts per meter squared, or the total rate of heat loss in terms of watts. And to go in between the two for this particular conduction problem, you just multiply by the total cross-sectional area. So we're going to do an example problem, and I'm going to show you how you could apply Fourier's law to get a heat flux from a known temperature profile. So if we took some solid rod of material like that shown here, so this solid rod has a temperature profile that can be described by the equation T as a function of x is equal to 5x plus 100. Again, a temperature profile is just an equation or a collection of data or a plot that shows you how temperature changes as a function of your spatial coordinates in your system. So this has this particular temperature profile and a thermal conductivity of 10. That's measured in watts per meter per Kelvin. Then what is the heat flux? So you can pause right now and you can take a moment to try and figure this out yourself. So go ahead and do that if you'd like to. So if you've paused, I'm going to walk us through how to do this problem now. So if you notice, this temperature, this rod has actually the reverse temperature profile of the example I showed previously, where now we have cold on the left-hand side and hot on the right-hand side. So if we plotted temperature as a function of x, that would reflect that, where it's starting off colder and getting hotter the deeper you go into the solid. So that's how our temperature profile looks like. So this is going to have a positive temperature gradient with respect to x. So think about that. Temperature is increasing as x increases. So that should tell us that the flux is going to be going the opposite way of our temperature gradient. So let's just go ahead and think through that. So Fourier's law tells us that our flux in the x direction is equal to minus k dt dx. So dt dx is positive. Our temperature is increasing with x. Our thermal conductivity is always a positive number, a finite and positive number, and then we have this minus sign. So that minus sign is pretty critical because that's telling us which direction heat is flowing. So we have a positive temperature gradient and a positive thermal conductivity, so that's going to tell us that our flux is negative. And what does it mean to have a negative heat flux? Well, that is really just a function of how we've defined our coordinate system. So we've defined our coordinate system with x being positive from left to right, and this tells us that our flux is actually going the opposite way of our coordinate system. It's going against x. We could redefine our coordinate system to have x start over here, and that would give us a positive flux. So really, energy and flux are really positive terms. You can't really have negative energy, but you could have heat flowing against your coordinate system. So if we were to plot how our flux looks like, we'd have, if 0 were up here, the slope of this line is constant, which means our heat flow is going to be constant, and the slope of this line is positive, and because of this negative sign here, our flow of heat is going to be constant and negative, which again, that negative flux just means that the heat is flowing against our coordinate system. All right, let's put some actual numbers to this now. So our first step would be take the derivative of our temperature profile. So that derivative, the derivative of 5x plus 100 is just 5. That's going to have units of a change in temperature is Kelvin and a change in distance is meters. So our temperature gradient is 5 Kelvin per meter, which means every meter we're going, we're increasing our temperature by 5. So if we plugged everything in here now, we would get that our flux in the x direction is equal to minus 10, and I'll just put the units here on the bottom, minus 10 watts per meter per Kelvin multiplied by 5 Kelvin per meter, which gives us minus 50, and we're going to have watts per meter squared. So that's a flux term. It's, as I've mentioned in previous lectures, it's really important to have a conceptual understanding of what's going on, and we've done just that. We've thought about how our temperature profile changes, we've thought about which direction we're expecting heat to flow, so we're in really good shape. And then we only do unit conversions at the end. We plug in units just to make sure we've done the math correctly, and that tells us we're getting the units that we want and that we do expect for a flux. So that just confirms that we've done the problem correctly. So I always recommend writing out your equation algebraically and then applying units at the end only to check your math. Don't try and randomly plug in numbers until you get the units to line up, because that's going to be really confusing for you, and inevitably something will get screwed up. And most importantly, that conveys that you don't really have a fundamental understanding conceptually of what's happening in your problem. So in this particular problem, we get Q in the x direction. The Q double prime in the x direction is minus 50 watts per meter squared. And again, that negative flow of heat just means it's going against our coordinate system. Some things to remember for conduction. So the driving force is a temperature gradient. So that's dt dx. And it's that same driving force that shows up in our rate equation, where we have Q double prime. I'll get rid of the x here. I'll put this in more general terms. Q double prime is equal to minus the gradient of temperature. So this particular form is what shows up in Fourier's law. And actually, I forgot to put the thermal conductivity in there. So the rate equation for conduction is called Fourier's law. You'll want to commit that to memory. We'll be using it over and over again. And you'll know whenever you need to quantify the rate of heat transfer by conduction, you need to use Fourier's law. That'll apply ubiquitously for conduction problems. When we're solving conduction problems, we are often trying to solve for the temperature profile. So we'd be doing the reverse of what we just did. Before we applied Fourier's law to a known temperature profile to get the rate of heat transfer, often we'll work backwards from that. We'll apply Fourier's law to get the rate, and then we'll do some integration to get the temperature profile. But generally with conduction, we're looking for solving for this profile. What is our equation as a function of x, or as a function of r, or as a function of x, y, and z? And this could also be dynamic. So we'll use conduction in a solid. You have these temperature gradients, and you can solve and figure out what your temperature profile is. And we typically won't be looking for just a single temperature. But that concludes this lecture. Thank you for listening.